The marble floor of Center Royal reflected a warm golden glow from the crystal chandeliers hanging high above. The space was designed to impress from the very first step, luxurious, glittering, flawless. Yet that perfection faltered in a single instant when a man stepped through the revolving door. His shoes carried the dust of the road, his hoodie wrinkled after a long overnight flight. He looked nothing like the kind of guest who would spend $2,000 a night to stay here. He stood there, composed, his deep eyes seeming to register every detail. His name was Johnson, around 40 years old. No one knew. No one could have guessed. The quiet man before them was, in fact, the new owner of the entire hotel chain. But at this moment, in the eyes of the staff and the well-heeled guests, he was nothing more than an intruder. Clara, the shift manager, glanced him up and down, then leaned slightly, her hand brushing the button beneath the reception desk. Without a word, seconds later, 2 security guards appeared at the end of the corridor, their heavy steps silent but full of warning. No shouting, no explanation. Only Clara's frozen stare, as if saying outright, "You don't belong here." Johnson stood still, his arms loose at his sides, offering no resistance, no hasty defense. He let the silence stretch, letting everyone write their own version of the scene, a version that, in just 20 minutes, they would all regret, because they did not know the truth. Not the fur-clad guests sipping their wine, not the staff avoiding his gaze, and least of all Clara, the one smiling with pride. None of them knew that the man who seemed so out of place was the new owner of the entire building. Johnson was not a man in a hurry to prove anything. He had walked through too many brightly lit rooms, faced too many cold stares just like these. At 40, he was the founder and CEO of Johnson Hospitality Group, a hotel empire worth over $3.2 billion, spanning 11 countries, decorated with dozens of prestigious awards. Yet few people ever recognized his real face. That was intentional. Johnson always chose to remain in the shadows, letting the brand shine while he quietly observed. For him, a system only revealed its truth when those inside believed no one important was watching. And so, he often appeared as a man with no name, no title, blending into the crowd. Just 2 days before stepping into the lobby of Center Royal, Johnson had signed the deal to acquire the entire hotel chain through a web of subsidiaries. Everything was executed in silence. No press conference, no internal memo. Not a single announcement leaked out. Even the staff serving in that glittering hall had no idea that the contracts they worked under now carried his signature. When Johnson booked the penthouse under the name of a subsidiary, no one paid attention. No special notes, no VIP alerts, just a small line buried in the reservation system. And that was exactly what he wanted. He didn't need to be welcomed with a red carpet. He needed the truth, because the truth of an organization doesn't live in polished speeches. It shows in how it treats the person it believes is unworthy of a second glance. Behind the worn jacket and the weary eyes stood the man who had just bought the very world they were standing in. But Clara didn't see. Neither did the guests. No one realized their test had already begun, and the result would be written right there, on the marble floor they believed was unshakable. 3 days before stepping into Center Royal, Johnson had drawn the plan himself. No escort team, no PR crew waiting, not a single leak to the outside. Just one anonymous booking in the system so that everything would unfold naturally. He called it a controlled failure, a deliberate experiment to see exactly where the system would crack when stripped of the spotlight. Johnson's leather jacket was worn at the elbows, his jeans dusty after the long trip, an old backpack, strap frayed, slung over one shoulder. He knew this image did not fit a hotel where rooms cost $2,000 a night. That was the point, to see the truth once the glittering facade was gone. The glass revolving door opened. Light from the chandeliers spilled across the marble floor, broken into fragments by each of his steps. Every gaze in the lobby turned toward him, not with friendly curiosity, but with calculation. A few guests in velvet chairs bent their heads, whispering. A man lowered his newspaper, his eyes cold as they swept across him. A woman sipped her wine, lips pressed tight, murmuring to her companion. No one said anything aloud, but the message was clear. You are not one of us. Johnson kept walking, each step echoing in the silence like a test. He wasn't offended. On the contrary, he felt he was gathering data. Not the polite, trained smiles, but the raw reactions of people who believed there was nothing of value in the man standing before them. At the reception desk, a young clerk named Ryan hesitated, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. His eyes betrayed uncertainty, welcome or warn. Before Ryan could speak, the sharp sound of heels struck from the hallway. Clara, the manager, appeared. Her eyes swept over Johnson for less than a second before passing judgment. "This is a private area," Clara said, her voice cold. "We do not accommodate strangers." One sentence, enough to confirm that the test Johnson had been waiting for had truly begun. Johnson stopped just in front of the reception desk. The chandelier light fell on him, highlighting every crease in the wrinkled hoodie he had worn through the long flight. He did not bow his head. He did not raise his voice. Only a calm, steady gaze fixed on Clara. "I have a reservation," Johnson said, his tone even and firm. "Under the name Johnson Group." Clara folded her arms, her face as if she had just heard a joke. She didn't bother to look at the computer screen, didn't even attempt to confirm. Instead, her lips curled slightly, half smile, half sneer. "There's no such name here," Clara replied, her words soft but sharp. Then she tilted her head, her eyes running over him as though he were an object misplaced in this polished space. Behind him, a quiet laugh broke the silence. Someone sipped their wine and muttered loud enough for others to hear, "Maybe he's at the wrong address." Another whisper followed, light as air, but heavier than any insult. Ryan, the young clerk, still stood nearby, his eyes darting between the screen and Clara's face. He wanted to speak, but didn't dare. Power in this room did not belong to him. It lived in Clara's every snap of the fingers, every furrow of her brow. Johnson remained still. He didn't shift, didn't reveal a trace of irritation. "I would greatly appreciate it," he said slowly, "if you could kindly check the system again." Clara raised an eyebrow, her eyes cold, sharp as a thin blade. "There's no need," she said flatly. "You're in the wrong place." The air in the lobby thickened. Several guests nearby leaned toward each other, whispering just loud enough to ripple into a low murmur. One guest chuckled, shaking his head, eyes gleaming with amusement. This was no longer a simple refusal. It was a performance of power, delivered in silence, reinforced by the chorus of watching eyes. Clara didn't need to shout. With just a few words, she had made the entire lobby accept Johnson as an outsider. But he did not step back. He had come to witness precisely this moment. And Clara, unaware of who stood before her, had just handed him the clearest evidence of the culture he had come to test. The moment stretched like a taut wire. Johnson stood there, hands loose at his sides, eyes fixed on Clara. He did not rush. He did not retreat. "Please," he said, his voice steady, "check the system again." Clara tilted her head, as if the request were nothing but an unnecessary burden. A fleeting smile crossed her lips, born not of joy, but of absolute certainty that she held the power. "No need to waste time," she replied. "There is no reservation under that name." A soft laugh rose again from the corner of the lobby. A man lounging in a leather chair whispered to his friend, deliberately loud enough, "Maybe he's just trying his luck." Another chuckle followed, blending with the faint clink of glasses, as if the ridicule needed a soundtrack. Johnson drew in a slow breath. He did not argue. He did not need to. Everything happening here was the data he had come to see. How an entire space of supposed luxury could unanimously reject a man, solely because of how he looked. Clara folded her arms tighter, her eyes detached yet razor-sharp. "We have our own standards," she said, her voice cold, each word polished like stone. "Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable somewhere, less demanding." The sentence cut like a velvet-covered blade, soft, polite on the surface, yet brimming with disdain underneath. The atmosphere shifted. More guests tilted their heads, smirking, their quick glances trading as if they were all in on a brief piece of entertainment. Ryan, the young clerk, bit his lip, his hand still hovering over the keyboard. He hesitated, but did not act. Clara's authority was a wall, forcing him into silence. Johnson remained silent too. He knew. This silence was the clearest mirror. Every word Clara spoke, every glance the guests exchanged, every ounce of indifference from the staff. Together, they wrote the answer. For them, his silence was weakness. For Johnson, silence was evidence. And that evidence was piling up, second by second. The lobby of Center Royal fell silent, broken only by the echo of Clara's heels striking the marble. She stood tall, her gaze cold as ice. Johnson had not moved. He knew it was time to place another brick in this test. Slowly, he slid his hand inside his jacket. No rush, no theatrics. Every eye followed him. A few guests leaned forward, waiting to see what he would do. When his hand emerged, the chandelier light caught the surface of a matte black metal card. Heavy, unmistakable. The Centurion card. A quiet emblem of power, a card no one could apply for, only receive. Johnson set it on the reception desk. Gently, yet the metallic clack against the stone counter echoed like a knock on the heartbeat of the room. Ryan's eyes widened slightly, his lips parting as if to speak. A faint intake of breath spread from the velvet chairs. They knew what that card meant. Only Clara did not flinch. She glanced down at the card, then back up, her lips curling into a half smile. "Anyone could fake something that looks like that," she said, her tone laced with mockery. The air froze. A guest at the bar gave a low whistle. A whisper rippled out. "A Centurion called fake." No one laughed aloud, but the tension was strung tight as wire. Johnson did not pull his hand back. He left the card where it was, his palm resting beside it, his gaze steady, calm. He had not come to prove power. He had come to see how power would be denied, and Clara had given him exactly what he needed. For the last time, Johnson said, his voice low, clear, each word precise. "Please check the system." Clara never glanced at the screen. Instead, she pressed the button beneath the desk, her voice sharp through the radio. "This guest is causing a disturbance. Escort him out." Footsteps sounded from the corridor. 2 security guards appeared, tall, broad-shouldered, faces expressionless. The black card still lay on the counter, glinting under the lights. And in that moment, the entire lobby knew they were witnessing something unusual, though none understood its full weight. Johnson's eyes stayed forward. No anger, no fear, only observation. He recorded every glance, every faint smirk, every whisper, each one sketching the true portrait of this place. The 2 security guards advanced, leather shoes striking evenly against the marble floor, their steps echoing through the vast center royal lobby. No one spoke loudly, yet everything had become a silent performance. Clara folded her arms across her chest, chin lifted high, like a director certain the ending of her play was already written. Johnson did not move. His eyes swept the lobby, meeting every kind of gaze, curiosity, contempt, even amusement. A couple by the fireplace whispered, "Who does he think he is?" A man with a glass of red wine chuckled, "Probably another pretender." None of them knew that the man in the worn jacket was the new owner of the entire building. "Please come with us," one guard said, his voice low, but carrying a practiced politeness. His hand rested lightly on Johnson's arm, not forceful, but guiding him toward the door. Johnson did not resist. He let them lead him, his steps steady, composed. Not defeat, but record. A record of indifference, of complicity in silence. The black card still lay on the counter, abandoned, like evidence left ignored. Clara spoke loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "This isn't the first time someone's tried to impersonate a VIP. We protect our standards." Several guests nodded. A few phones were raised, recording the scene as if it were cocktail hour entertainment. Under the golden light, disdain spread like a quiet flame. Johnson walked past the leather chairs, past the bar, past the gleaming mirrors. Each step was a slice of the truth he had come for. It wasn't him they disdained. It was anyone who looked out of place. He had seen the entire script of Center Royal in just 15 minutes. A woman whispered as he passed, "There." A lesson for those who don't know their place. Johnson heard, but he did not react. He held his silence, not the silence of surrender, but the silence of a judge before delivering a verdict. The glass doors spun open. The night wind of New York rushed in, cold, yet gentler than the chill of the eyes cast upon him. He pulled out his phone, pressed a familiar number. His voice was calm, almost light. "Sarah, call a board meeting in 20 minutes. Prepare the press release. And make sure every face in that lobby is photographed." He ended the call, slipped the phone back into his coat. Behind him, laughter lingered, toasts for Clara's protection of the brand echoing in the hall. But none understood that the moment of their triumph was the moment they had signed their own indictment. Johnson stood beneath the bright sign of Center Royal, eyes lifted. He exhaled softly, his gaze cold, sharp. The test is complete. The revolving doors closed, and Johnson's figure vanished from the Center Royal lobby. For a moment, the air seemed lighter, relieved. Clara turned, a thin smile tugging at her lips. She received a few approving nods from guests still sipping their wine. "Handled neatly," an older man whispered, extending his hand as if congratulating a victory. Clara returned the handshake firmly, her eyes glowing with pride. "We have to protect the brand. Can't let just anyone walk through the doors." Murmurs of agreement spread. A few staff bowed their heads, avoiding the memory of Johnson's gaze, pretending they had seen nothing. Once again, Clara stood at the center of attention, satisfied as though she had just delivered another flawless performance in a familiar play. But behind the desk, Ryan did not smile. His fingers still rested on the keyboard, his heart racing as he replayed the man's eyes, calm, yet heavy, as if he already knew everything. Something's wrong, Ryan thought. He stole a glance at Clara, who was still chatting with guests. Seizing the moment, Ryan lowered his head, typing quickly. "Jackson Group, Penthouse, 3 nights." The screen lit up instantly. Information appeared clear and precise. VIP booking, CEO clearance level, confirmed 3 days ago. Ryan's heart sank. Everything was valid. There had been no mistake at all. He swallowed hard and scrolled down to the notes section. A single line froze his breath. Guest, Johnson Wade, CEO, Jackson Hospitality Group. Ryan's eyes widened as though the screen itself had betrayed the reality he thought he knew. Frantically, he opened a browser, typed the name. Headlines flooded the page. Forbes features, financial reports, international news. The latest headline struck like thunder. Johnson Wade acquires Center Royal chain in $400 million deal. The photo alongside it made Ryan's stomach twist. The man in the picture, worn jacket, composed posture, was the very guest they had just escorted out. There was no mistake. Ryan froze, his heart pounding out of rhythm. A thought seared through him. I just watched the new owner of this hotel be humiliated in front of everyone. And I did nothing. He looked up. Clara was still talking, her face radiant, as if she had secured the achievement of her career. No one else knew the truth that was quietly detonating on the screen in front of him. "My God," Ryan whispered hoarsely. "He's the owner." His mind spun. Johnson's words before being escorted out echoed back, "I will remember every face tonight." Ryan understood. This wasn't a threat. It was a record. And in less than 20 minutes, everyone in this lobby would witness the truth laid bare. Clara was celebrating, but it was only the stillness before the storm. Ryan's eyes darted around. Guests still chatting, staff still forcing smiles. No one realized the screen before him held a ticking bomb. He drew a deep breath, whispering as if confessing to himself, "We just made the biggest mistake of our lives." The glass revolving door opened once more. The atmosphere in the lobby dropped instantly. The man in the worn jacket, old backpack slung to one side, walked straight in as if nothing had happened. His shoes struck evenly against the marble floor, the sound so clear it drowned out the soft background music. A guest let his newspaper slip from his hands. A woman whispered to her companion, "Could it really be him again?" Johnson's expression did not change. He did not glance around, nor react to the suspicious stares. His only destination was the reception desk. Ryan, the young clerk, froze. On the screen before him, the penthouse booking under Johnson Group still glowed bright. His heartbeat raced, but he dared not speak. Johnson stopped at the counter. His voice was low, steady, pitched for everyone in the room to hear. "I believe you still have my reservation." Ryan swallowed hard. He didn't need to type anything. The confirmation page was still open. But before he could answer, Clara strode forward quickly. "He dares to come back," Clara snapped. Her tone reached for authority, but in that moment, her own strain bled through. Guests began to murmur. Phones were raised, ready to capture every detail. Everyone wanted to know, who was this man, and why could he return so openly? Johnson did not respond to Clara. Instead, he reached into his jacket and placed a small object on the counter. The golden light reflected across silver letters, clear for all to see. Johnson Wade, Chief Executive Officer, Jackson Hospitality Group. The lobby fell silent. Ryan's eyes widened. A few guests covered their mouths. The air shifted, as though an invisible cord had tightened around the entire room. Clara faltered for a beat, then forced out a denial. "Business cards can be printed anywhere. Don't think you can fool us again." Johnson lifted his head. His gaze calm, neither rushed nor slow. He said nothing further, only one small action. He pulled out his phone, dialed. The ringing tone filled the tense silence. Everyone waited. He didn't look at Clara. He didn't look at Ryan. He spoke briefly, flatly. "Sarah, connect me to the board of directors." The phone screen lit, speaker mode primed. No one in the lobby knew what was about to happen. They only felt the swell of an unseen tide rising fast. The speakerphone echoed, its sound spreading across the Center Royal lobby. "Good evening, Mr. Johnson." A deep, steady male voice rang from the other end, clear, authoritative. "We received notice you would be visiting the new property. The board congratulates you on the successful acquisition. This is now officially the latest asset of the group." In that instant, the hotel lobby fell into absolute silence. A guest holding a wine glass lost his grip, liquid spilling across the tablecloth. The woman from before covered her mouth, eyes wide in disbelief. Phones that had been secretly recording were raised higher, desperate not to miss a second. Clara froze, her complexion drained as though all blood had been pulled from her body. Yet she forced out words, her voice trembling but sharp. No, this can't be. This is just a show, a staged performance. I don't believe it." Johnson didn't move. He didn't need to raise his voice. He simply set the phone gently on the counter, letting the voice on speaker continue. "Please note, the system has already been updated with the new ownership. Mr. Johnson Wade is the highest authority at Center Royal, effective since last week." Those words landed like a final verdict. Behind the desk, Ryan's eyes locked on the computer screen. The VIP reservation, the Johnson Group name, the CEO level tag, displayed clearly. His throat dry, he finally whispered, loud enough for the counter to hear, "My God, he really is the owner." The lobby erupted in murmurs. A few guests stepped back, distancing themselves from Clara as if afraid of association. Whispers collided. "We were wrong. She threw out the new owner." Clara scrambled, her voice rising. Even if he's the CEO, he can't behave this way. I followed procedure. I upheld brand standards." Johnson cut her off, one short, decisive line. "The standards you speak of have just exposed their true face." He turned, sweeping his gaze across the lobby, his voice low, firm, without needing to shout. "I did not come here for revenge. I came to clean out what's rotten." No applause, no cheers, only a heavy silence blanketing the room. Everyone understood. This was no mere incident with a guest. This was the culture of Center Royal, laid bare. Ryan bowed his head, his hands trembling on the keyboard. In his eyes, fear, but also hope, because he knew everything was about to change. Clara had no words left to cling to. The world around her was cracking. The gazes that once supported her had turned away. She stood stranded, a fractured statue in a hall of light. Johnson gave a slight nod as if confirming to himself. The experiment was over. What came next would be the truth. The air in the Center Royal lobby thickened. Everyone waited to see what Johnson would do next. He no longer looked at Clara, nor at the whispering guests. Johnson faced the counter, his voice steady. "Ryan, open the system. I want every complaint file from the past 12 months. Filter by manager." Ryan froze. His hand trembled slightly, his eyes flicking toward Clara as if seeking permission. Clara snapped, her voice breaking. "You don't have the authority." Johnson cut in, decisive. "You work for the group." And she, his eyes flicked briefly toward Clara, lost her authority 5 minutes ago. The command rang sharp. Ryan inhaled, fingers tapping the keys. The screen glowed blue, then slowly filled with rows of data. Each line clear, date, department, case status. A sharp ping marked the search complete. Ryan looked up, face drained. "There are 17 files, sir, all tied to manager Clara Langford." The lobby erupted. Guests and staff alike murmured in shock. Clara rushed forward, waving her hands. "They were exaggerated, just minor issues." Johnson's tone stayed calm, yet each word struck like a blade into stone. "How many required financial settlements?" Ryan swallowed hard, bent back to the keyboard. Within seconds, the number appeared. 6. A total of 6 cases, each paid out to avoid litigation. The murmur deepened, heavier, darker. A guest blurted out, "And she always said it was to protect the brand." Clara screamed, her voice unraveling. "That's exactly what I was doing. If I hadn't been tough, the brand would have been dragged through the mud." Johnson turned toward her, his gaze steady. "Protecting a brand never means trampling people. These numbers are not trivial. This is a broken system, and you allowed it to exist." He didn't need to add more. The screen, 17 complaints, 6 settlements, shone under the chandelier light, evidence undeniable. No mocking laughter remained, no excuse carried weight. The Center Royal lobby now felt like a silent courtroom, and Clara stood at its center. The Center Royal lobby fell silent. Only the clatter of keys and the pounding of someone's heartbeat remained. 17 complaints, 6 settlements. The numbers burned on the screen like ink that could never be erased. Johnson turned slightly, his eyes sweeping across each face. He didn't say much, just raised his hand toward the staff. These aren't just numbers. They are people. If you've lived it, now is the time to speak. The silence pressed heavy until a small figure stepped forward. A housekeeper, gloves still on her hands, her voice trembling. She once shouted in my face, for no reason, just because I was in her line of sight. Clara snapped back, sharp and defensive. She was slow at her job. I only reminded her. But Johnson lifted his hand. His calm gaze cut her words short, leaving her choking on silence. From the bar, a young server stepped out. I kept getting my shifts switched, only because I wouldn't reply to her texts after hours. When I complained, she told me, "This place isn't for people like you." Guests shook their heads, murmuring. Then, from the seats along the wall, an elderly guest pushed herself up with a cane. Her voice was clear, carrying years of indignation. "Last year, I booked a suite. They called and claimed there was an emergency maintenance, but I knew it was a lie. I wasn't like the other guests here. Today, I have my answer." Ryan's fingers flew across the keys. The screen confirmed her story. The suite had been reassigned, no record of maintenance at all. He read aloud. Confirmed, no repair scheduled, only a directive from management. A collective gasp swept the room. A younger guest raised his phone, live streaming on the spot. "You see this? Everything's out in the open now." Clara's face drained. She struggled, words spilling desperate. "I did it to protect standards. The brand has to have standards." But Johnson's voice cut through, not loud but sharp as glass. "You call that a standard? I call it discrimination." In that moment, the silence shifted. No one looked at Johnson with suspicion anymore. Every gaze turned toward Clara, the woman once so certain of her power, now trembling, alone. One by one, more staff stood. The receptionist, the guard, even a valet. Each added another piece. Stories of being belittled, of unfair scolding, of silence forced upon them. Testimony flowed like a dam breaking, voices rising, multiplying, cornering Clara with no escape. And in the end, Johnson didn't need to deliver a verdict. He simply observed, letting the truth expose itself. And that truth was stronger than any false power Clara had ever wielded. The Center Royal lobby fell silent after the wave of accusations. Clara stood with no one at her side. Faces that once nodded in support now avoided her eyes. Johnson waited a few breaths, then stepped forward. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't signal. Yet the room fell utterly still. His voice carried, not loud, not hurried, but deep and steady. "I once stood where you stand. Not as a CEO, not as an owner. I was the one pushing a mop on the night shift, the one hauling luggage twice my weight just to get a guest to their room on time. I heard the mocking laughter behind my back because my clothes didn't fit or my shoes were worn down at the heel." He paused, letting those images sink deep into every mind. Then he continued, his gaze sweeping the hall. "But from those days, I learned the most important lesson. No one has the right to decide the worth of a person at a glance, not by the shoes they wear, not by the jacket on their back, but by how they work, by how they treat others." Clara lowered her head. Her defense of protecting the brand now sounded hollow, empty. Johnson pressed on, each word measured, heavy. "I did not buy Center Royal to replace carpets or hang more chandeliers. I bought this place to change the way people think, because a true brand is not marble or crystal. A brand is how we make people feel when they walk through these doors." The lobby held its breath. Some eyes brimmed with tears. Employees stood taller, as if strength had been restored to their backs. "From this day forward," Johnson concluded, "value will not be measured by appearance. It will be measured by kindness, by responsibility, by respect. And if anyone here believes power gives them the right to diminish another, remember, that ends at this very moment." The final words fell onto the marble like an oath. No applause, none needed. The slow nods of staff, the exchanged glances of guests, All proof enough that the message had struck every heart. The air in the Center Royal lobby remained heavy after the monologue. Johnson placed his phone on the reception counter, speaker on. His voice rang clear. From this moment forward, every internal policy of Center Royal will be made public. No more vague rules designed to protect a select few. No more files buried in drawers. Every employee, every guest will have the right to see and to question. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then Johnson tapped the screen, dialing the head of Human Resources. The speaker crackled, a professional female voice answering, "Yes, sir, I'm here." Johnson didn't waste words. "Begin digitizing all internal regulations immediately. Within 24 hours, they will be published openly on the employee and customer portals. At the same time, launch a direct hotline for complaints, bypassing all levels of management. Confirm?" The voice replied, firm and steady. "Understood. I'll issue the notice immediately." A chorus of pings rippled through the lobby as emails landed in staff inboxes. Several pulled out their phones, eyes widening at the subject line. Transparency policy, effective immediately. Guests began to murmur. One whispered, "This is the first time I've seen a CEO make internal policies public." An employee nodded, whispering to a colleague, "This changes everything." No more complaints disappearing into a drawer. Clara's face drained of color. She tried to salvage her ground. "You're dismantling discipline. We can't have everything exposed to the public." Johnson turned fully toward her, his tone low but unyielding. "No, I'm rebuilding discipline. Discipline built on truth. If an organization can only stand by hiding, it was never strong to begin with." The words struck like a final hammer blow, shattering the fragile shards of argument Clara still clung to. She stepped back, the icy edge in her eyes gone. Johnson turned back to the lobby, his gaze softening. Center Royal does not just sell service. We trade in trust, and trust only lives in transparency. The hall fell utterly still. No objections, no scoffing, only quiet nods from employees, from guests, even from those who had once stayed silent. After announcing transparency, Johnson did not leave. He stepped forward, his eyes sweeping the lobby, lingering on the faces that had spoken and the ones that had stayed silent. "We will not stop at removing one person," he said, his voice steady. "Rebuilding means starting from within, and I cannot do it alone. Each of you must choose, remain silent or help build a new environment where respect is no longer a slogan, but an action." He turned toward Ryan. The young clerk's eyes flickered, recalling the moment he stayed silent when he should have spoken. Johnson did not condemn. He spoke gently. "You hesitated, but that hesitation showed me you sensed something was wrong. And today, you stepped forward. Change begins in moments like that." Ryan swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "I'm ready," he answered, his voice not loud but carrying far. Johnson continued, this time to every staff member present. "Those who were suppressed will be heard. Those who stayed silent now have the chance to make it right. I am not looking for perfection. I'm looking for people who can learn, who can rise after their mistakes." A ripple of murmurs spread, full of assent. A housekeeper wiped her tears quickly. A waiter clenched his colleague's hand tight. Clara whispered, desperate, "You're turning all this into an experiment." Johnson turned back, his reply calm. "No, I'm turning it into a beginning." No one laughed, no one objected. His words, low but clear, fell like a new foundation for Center Royal. Camera flashes burst through the tall glass of the Center Royal lobby. Reporters crowded outside, microphones raised, lenses aimed straight in. The news had spread faster than any press release. Johnson did not shy away. He stepped into the center of the lobby, the very spot where just 20 minutes earlier he had been escorted out. No podium, no reserved seats, only him and the crowd. "You want to know why I came here today?" Johnson began, his tone calm but carrying. "I didn't come to show power, and I didn't come for revenge. I came to test my own system and to prove that power only has value when it is tested." Cameras snapped in rapid bursts. From the front row, a reporter called out, "Why didn't you reveal your identity from the start?" Johnson gave a faint smile, his reply firm, "Because I don't need people to bow when I walk in. I need them to show decency when they believe no one is watching." The lobby froze in silence. Only the clicks of recorders filled the air. A simple line, but one that struck like a shockwave. He continued, this time addressing the cameras. I want every hotel in the Center Royal chain and this entire industry to understand. Transparency is not optional. It is the foundation. Respect is not a privilege. It is a basic right. And from today, violations will have no shelter in the dark. Another reporter pushed forward. How will you handle the managers responsible for misconduct? Johnson glanced toward Clara, silent now, standing in the corner, then turned back. The answer is simple: immediate termination. No symbolic discipline, no delay. If leadership forgets that service means respect, they have no place in this system. The cameras panned across the room. Faces of staff came into view, some anxious but more showing relief. The message was unmistakable. This was not a press conference. It was a public pledge, one Johnson had deliberately made sure the whole world would witness. After Johnson's message to the press, the air in the Center Royal lobby softened, and then the most unexpected thing happened. A housekeeper, still in her simple uniform, gloves smudged with dust, stepped forward slowly. Her steps were hesitant, but her eyes carried resolve. The entire lobby watched. She stopped right in front of Johnson, her voice trembling but clear. Thank you for doing what no one else dared to do, for giving us the feeling of being seen, of being heard. Johnson did not reply immediately. He looked straight at her, not from above, not through the lens of authority, but eye to eye, as equals. And in a moment where everyone held their breath, he bowed his head. No words, no theatrics, just a simple bow, yet it carried more weight than 1,000 speeches. Click, the sound of a camera, then another, then dozens more. Lenses captured the image of a CEO bowing to a housekeeper. Two figures, one in a suit, one in a simple uniform, standing side by side, sharing the same light. Within moments, the photos spread across social media. The hashtag #respect before title exploded. International broadcasts paired the image with Johnson's earlier words. I don't need people to bow when I walk in. I need them to show decency when they believe no one is watching. Within hours, the image had become a symbol, not just for Center Royal, but for an entire industry longing for change. That single humble bow had said it all. Respect comes before business cards. 1 week later, Center Royal appeared on CNN. The morning feature replayed the footage of Johnson being escorted out of the lobby, then cut to him returning, standing before the press, and finally the moment he bowed to the housekeeper. A headline scrolled across the screen. Center Royal, from crisis to a turning point of transparency. The reporter narrated, within 48 hours, the clip of Johnson's bow surpassed 12 million views. Comments overflowed with one shared message. This is what real leadership looks like. Back at the hotel lobby, a new brass plaque gleamed beside the glass doors. No logo, no polished slogan, just one line engraved, here, only those who know respect are allowed to stay. Guests paused to read it. Employees walked taller as they passed. The atmosphere was no longer bound by fear, but by responsibility, fed by pride. Ryan, now in a tailored suit, a small nameplate shining, general manager. He welcomed guests with steady eyes and a genuine smile. Not a rehearsed one, but one born from within. International media called it the Center Royal Standard, a new benchmark for the hotel industry. Transparency, accountability, and respect above all. In a later podcast, Johnson sat across from the host. No grand backdrop, just a microphone and a glass of water. The host asked, "Could you share one final message for those watching?" Johnson replied, his voice low, steady. "I didn't do this to become a headline. I did it to remind everyone, from staff to guests, that there are many places you can find luxury. But the true luxury is being treated with respect." The host nodded. A moment of silence followed. No words needed. Final scene. Johnson walking out of the Center Royal lobby in the morning. No applause, no press barricade. Just a young bellhop nodding, an elderly guest smiling, and a housekeeper bowing her head slightly. Johnson returned the gesture with a small nod. Simple, but enough. The screen faded to black. White text appeared. If you believe respect comes before the business card, leave a comment and hit subscribe. This journey isn't over. The next lobby is waiting. The final sound, the steady echo of footsteps on marble, like the heartbeat of a mission that never stops.